because the battle lines are already beginning to be drawn ahead of this year's US presidential election after Donald Trump took a giant step last night towards becoming the Republican candidate with a landslide victory in the Iowa caucuses. Current President Joe Biden reacted by declaring Trump the clear front runner and vowed to take on the extreme Republicans. Oh dear. To discuss this, I'm joined by the chair of the Republicans Overseas, UK, and that is, of course, Mr. Greg Swenson. Greg, very, very good evening to you. Welcome to the new and improved independent Republican Mike Graham. A massive win for Donald Trump last night. And, of course, Biden started off his campaign, a couple of weeks ago by saying that if you vote for Trump, you're basically some kind of mad far-right extremist. Now that you see what's happened in Iowa, is he going to really still keep up with that kind of rhetoric?
Mike, I think, yes, he will, because that's all he has, right? Yeah. In the old days, it was identity politics. It's all the Democrats had. It's all Biden had was, the racial identity. Now all he has is MAGA, orange man bad and Trump derangement syndrome and MAGA bad. So that's all he's got to run on, because his administration has been a complete and utter failure. So I think that's all he's going to do. They're going to run against MAGA. They're going to run against the Trump personality. It worked in 2020. It worked in the midterms in 22. The question is, will it work again in 24?
Well, this is the thing, because it was a pretty historic kind of victory for him. Donald Trump saying that it was the third time he'd won, I think he said. Nobody's ever won in Iowa by more than 12 points, but Trump's margin is something like 30%. So, I mean, everybody's been saying for a long time he's nailed on as the candidate. There's no way he doesn't get the nomination. I mean, that is even more certain now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an enormous win for Trump, no doubt. No non-incumbent Republican has ever won by that margin, nor have they ever been over 50%. The question is, do you treat Trump like an incumbent, a quasi-incumbent, or a non-incumbent? In many ways, he's an incumbent president, right? Yeah. He's the leader of the party. He was president 3 years ago. And so incumbents usually run at 90. If they don't run at 90, they lose in the general. But President Biden, who's the actual incumbent, is running in the 60s. So he's just as flawed as candidates go. So look, no doubt, great win for President Trump yesterday. There's, both on the margin and on the absolute number. But if he was an incumbent president, and he kind of is, he should be polling much higher. So that's the big issue. You have two flawed candidates polling at 40 in terms of approval ratings. Biden's probably a little lower than that. And the question is, who loses to whom?
Well, that may well be, but a lot of people saying, in analysing the numbers, that he seems to be appealing to a fairly broad range of people. Like, he's appealing to young people, he's appealing to old people. He's not just appealing to his own "Make America Great Again" kind of caucus, if you like. He's appealing broadly to Republicans. And watching some of the reaction today on TalkTV from some of the people being interviewed who voted for him, they're saying, we want to get our country back. We want to get respect for America back, because right now nobody respects America.
Absolutely, Mike. And if, I'm looking at these, electoral metrics, but if you look at what's happening right now, it's really a referendum on two administrations, because it's so rare that we have a former president. It hasn't happened in 100 years since Teddy Roosevelt, that we have a former president running. So you can look at this as a referendum on the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And if you look at it that way, Trump should win in a landslide, because it's such a disaster right now because of the failures of Biden's policies and his personality and his cognitive challenges, versus Trump, which, in spite of everybody's, anger about his personal characteristics or his hyperbole or whatever you want to complain about, he absolutely crushed it during his administration. His policies, and more importantly, his outcomes, were great for American people and the world. So, look, if it becomes a referendum on the two presidencies, Trump will win hands over fist.
Yeah. Well, somebody said to me today, when was the last time the United States of America fired missiles in the Middle East, and the president of the United States didn't bother to address the nation to explain what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, Biden has been a disaster in terms of foreign policy. I mean, of course, it started with the debacle in Afghanistan, which, you know, that's what sent him into the initial tailspin from polling in the 50s or 60s down to 40. But he's never recovered because it's not just foreign policy. Obviously, it's domestic policies that have been horrible for American people, especially American workers. But, you know, if you look at the foreign policy, you know, his lack of deterrence, his cutting defense spending by 3% in real terms, all of that adds up, not just the Afghanistan debacle, but everything that's happened since then. You know, it's really added up to a position of weakness for American power, and it's never good. And I think, again, that's another difference between this administration and the past administration, whether you like Trump or not.
Well, let's have a look at Donald Trump's winning moment now.
Good.
This has been an incredible experience. The people have been, this is the third time we've won, but this is the biggest win. They said, well, if you win by 12%, that's a big win. That's going to be very hard to do. Well, I think we've more than doubled that, I guess, tripled it maybe.
He's actually looking even more of a different colour than he was last time. But, you know, he is an exciting guy to watch, and you never know what he's going to say. What do you make of Vivek Ramaswamy pulling out? He's out of the race now, basically saying that he doesn't think he's going to carry on. Is there any chance he might become the vice presidential candidate?
I think there's a chance, for sure. I mean, he's obviously a huge Trump fan. It's often confusing, you know, about why he ran in the first place, given that he's a huge Trump supporter. But, you know, maybe he just wanted to be in a position to be vice president, or maybe be in a really good position to run in 2028 when Trump can't run again. So, you know, there's a couple of different arguments for Vivek. He was very popular with the, you know, the real conservative right, you know, and I really liked what he was saying back in the spring, early summer. Even his announcement, which was very understated on the op-ed pages of the Wall Street Journal, I thought was very impressive. I think he lost some traction when he started debating with the other candidates. He came off a little odd. But I think in the long run, that won't matter. I think he's here to stay. I think he's going to be a player in the future.
Okay. Greg, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Greg Swenson there from Republicans Overseas UK.